The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guests today are Warden Brian Milne of Grey County and Jill Paterson, who is the manager of Museum and Archives for Grey County, also known as Grey Roots. So we're going to have I hope we'll have some history lessons because I love history. And I'm sure we'll hear about recent history that's been going on in Grey County from the Warden. So welcome to you both.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, David.
Now, let's start with Jill here. Jill, you're obviously not in an office. Where are you?
Oh, no. So I am here in the new replica general store, circa 1920s in Morriston Heritage Village, which is a 20-acre heritage village right off the side of Grey Roots Museum and Archives.
Now, you've got a lot of groceries behind you. Are those period labels as well?
That's right. There are about 400 different artifacts and replicas inside the general store. Some of the things you see behind me here are replicas that were created by this collection staff at Grey Roots. So a shout out to Nikita Johnson and Sim Salata. And I'll just grab a piece here. So for example, these are pickles that were made in Owen Sound in the 1920s, and staff actually created all of these replica pickles. We had working bees with volunteers.
Oh, it looks like we have a technical issue, which we expected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to you, bro. Oh, and you're back. Okay, Jill, you made it back.
Oh, great.
Yeah, well, welcome to the fourth dimension.
Okay. Did you miss my whole talk about pickles that I just did?
Yeah, we missed the whole thing about pickles, but
no.
tell us about the pickles.
Okay, well, I was just saying that the replica products that you see behind me were created by the staff at Grey Roots. Many of them are recreations of products actually made in Grey County, Owen Sound in particular. These are some pickles made by the Taylor and Son Limited in Owen Sound, and they actually reproduced all of these pickles. Like, they're handmade by volunteers and staff, and are based on products that are in our collection. So we know they're super authentic and local. So that's kind of amazing.
I see in the corner up above your left shoulder, and don't reach up for it, is a Kellogg's Toasted Cornflakes box.
Yes. Yeah, I know there's a lot of familiar products, things like spearmint gum. Trying to think, there's a cool one over here. It's like energy barley that was made as a breakfast food right out of Owen Sound. And this is a product box that's in our collection. So really based on the history. This is a cool sign that visitors really love. I don't know if you can see this, but it's an ad for Sunlight Soap. So, but if you tilt it this way, it says less labor, maybe backwards for you guys.
Yep,
and on this side, it says, don't worry, less labor, Sunlight Soap. So depending on your angle, that's the high-tech advertising we had in the 1920s.
Now, you have to be too young to remember the Sunlight Soap that I remember, which was bars.
Oh.
Hard bars. Brian, do you remember that soap?
I'm going to say no, but I might be a little bit younger than you, but not by much, I don't think.
I remember that soap. It was absolutely brutal on the hands, but you found it in every workplace and every farmhouse. So
was it a lye soap, David?
I think so. It was hard yellow soap.
I do remember my mother using, or my grandmother rather. When I think about lye soap, that rings a bell.
Well, we won't ask you, Jill, if you have some actual lye soap, because I suspect that there may be someone who in Morriston who actually makes lye soap, if my memory is correct.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of talents in the volunteers that work here, but it's probably like a health and safety issue. Like you want to protect people from lye soap, I think.
Well, Brian can ignore that little remark. Okay,
Yeah.
Brian?
I see nothing. I see nothing.
Well, Jill, what kind of goods would the store be selling? Obviously groceries, but anything else?
Yeah, we've got a full gamut in here. There's children's toys. There are apparel. We've got hats from our collection and women's gloves, toiletries, things like buttons. The general store actually also has an auxiliary building or business, sorry, off the back, which is a seamstress's shop right now. And that was kind of a cool way for us to include a women's centered business that would be a period appropriate business. So if you were a single woman and maybe your husband's passed away after the First World War, this would be a business that would often be run by women in communities in Grey County. So, and lots of really talented seamstresses in our volunteer pool. So they were very excited to see that.
Great. And it's a kind of business that we still see today.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as people are trying to be a little more cost effective.
I was going to say, David, one of the things that we talk locally down in Southgate about the Holstein Mall, and of course that's the Holstein General Store, and it doesn't look dissimilar to what is behind Jill, and there's not much that you can't buy.
That's right. So we'll work with this, Jill. You freeze and then you come back.
And now I'm back. Yes, I see myself.
And now you're back. So we work with that. This is Rogers. We can deal with that.
Roll with it.
Yeah.
Brian.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna put in a plug for the county to improve the wireless access at Grey Roots, please.
Well, I'm going to ask you to get in line because there's several other people in front of you. I'm going to say many people in front of you. Yes. So we don't need to point out that Mr. Rogers is in the same business. So, you know.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware of that. But
Yep.
we'll see. Let's, I'm sure it'll get taken care of in due course. Anyway, Jill, let's talk a bit more about the products that you would have. You don't sell lumber because that would have been sold directly from a sawmill, I would think.
Yes, and we do happen to have a sawmill on site at Marston Heritage Village, so you can step down the road here and learn a bit more about sawmills. But no, and general stores would also be often places where residents had credit, so there was a bit of a bank aspect to a general store. Also, a post office. Often there'd be postal services out of the general store. And one of the great things about general stores is that they were community hubs. So they were places that you would connect with people. You would potentially gossip about your neighbors, but also there could be, checker games going on and men shooting the breeze. So I think we're really excited to animate the building in that way to sort of show the different village life here.
Uh-huh. One of the things I remember, and I'm dating myself, is that the village stores or the general stores in communities were also not just community hubs and places for information. They were places where notices would be put up. For example, an auction sale would be a poster for an auction sale would be, there'd be a bulletin board somewhere near it or on the front. The other function that was really interesting that I recall was obituaries.
Wow.
It was how funerals were announced. And I've talked to older funeral directors, and they said, earlier in their careers, there was actually a proper form that they would use with black outline on the paper. It would be a mourning, literally a mourning paper, M-O-U-R, not M-O-R. And so you've got this function as well. So now just make sure you're careful about whose name is on that should you decide to proceed down that road, Jill, okay? You don't want to put the name of someone who is not deceased.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to have any currently living people on that list.
No, you don't do that.
Yeah.
Do that. But the other thing is that where is this located within Morstan Village?
I would say it's right outside of the main gates. So just for people who may not be aware of Grey Roots, we're just outside of Owen Sound on Grey Road 18. We are at a 20-acre site. Our main building was built about 20 years ago, so we're coming up to 20th anniversary next year for Grey Roots, and it's something like 40,000 square feet. So it's a huge state-of-the-art structure that invites traveling exhibits from different international exhibit hosts. So right now we have an exhibit called Game Changers, which is an exploration of video games, really. And there's all kinds of games you can play. And it's a lot of retro games like Pong and Tetris and Super Mario Brothers. Guitar Hero is there's a duel you can do against your friends. So that's a really popular one. But it's from Science North in Sudbury. So really world-class exhibits and experiences.
Well, we're frozen again, and that's okay. Brian, you're too young to remember Pong, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
Oh no, I'm gone again. Now I'm
No,
back.
you're
That's
back.
okay.
Okay.
That's okay. What happens is Brian and I do a little back and forth. I simply asked him if he remembered Pong, and he doesn't. I do. Anyway, so what are some of the other exhibits that are right now on display in the main building?
So we have one of our permanent gallery space is called the Grey County Gallery, and it explores the history of Grey County. So we're right in the middle of a redesign of that space. We're kind of refreshing the exhibits that were there from 2004. And we're looking at all aspects of the county, from our natural resources to agriculture, our connections through transportation and community groups, and then looking at trying to redesign a space so we can sit together and gather and talk about what our hopes are for the future. So it should be really interactive and cover the whole breadth of the history of the county and be really inclusive of different perspectives and different communities. So that's the goal.
When will that be open?
Well, we're doing section by section. So right now, the first section is opened. It opened this past spring, and it's called Abundance. And Abundance looks at our forests, our waters, our agriculture. So really looking at the natural resources in the county and how lucky we are. Like if you look at the maps we have of the fresh water and the forests, we're really, we are abundant in resources, that's for sure. And then next year we should complete the final sections, which are called Connection, Permanence, and Hope. And they look at different communities. They look at ways we communicate with each other, whether that's through transportation or the community groups that we form. And then Permanence really looks at the geology and the archaeological history here, looking at the escarpment and that kind of thing. And then the last section is Hope, which I mentioned is really about getting community to dialogue with each other and kind of do some interactive activities together.
Sure. When you speak of these displays, when do the displays begin chronologically? Do you go back into the indigenous history, the indigenous presence on the land and in community as well?
Yes. Thank you, David. That's a great point to make. Yeah, when you ask about a timeline, it's really from time immemorial is what we say. So First Nations communities have been in Grey County for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So we start with that and really acknowledging that stewardship of the land that we're so lucky to have lived in a community that's been protected for years by that community. And then we have a great display that was just launched last year, working with an indigenous artist to look at the treaty system with Grey County and how that system progressed to what we see now as the land that is Grey County. And then what he's done is he's sort of thrown in the creation stories of the Anishinaabe to sort of layer it over with these long histories and stories and the two different kind of creation stories of that community, and then Grey County. So that starts the whole gallery. So that's great.
Well, I have to say, if you are venturing into the area of treaties, that in itself is a hugely complex issue, and and convoluted in many ways. It's not easy nor simple, and it's so to conclude that is quite remarkable, but also important, hugely important.
And we're really fortunate at Grey Roots. We've with working with the community, we've created an Indigenous advisory committee.
And we're frozen again, but that's all right.
I was just gonna add to Jill there that the First Nations display about the treaties and how it interacts with the land and everything else is very compelling. And you're right, David, it's a very complex topic, but I think the artist, and his name escapes me, Jill, but the artist did a very good job of making it understandable, shall we say, at a fairly high level, and it draws you into, you want to find more, you want more information, you want to find out, you want to try to understand, and it's a very well done display, I must say.
Sure.
Yeah.
The advisory committee.
Yes, thanks. Sorry, I hopped out again there. But the artist's name was Niles McGeezy Johnston. So his art is really vibrant and actually quite contemporary, and speaks to the still existing and thriving Indigenous community. So it's like pretty modern looking. And then we are lucky to be assisted by the Indigenous Advisory Circle that's made up of representatives from Saugeen First Nation and Chippewas and Nawash First Nation, who gather with us, and we talk through questions that we have, and they advise us on what would be the best course of action. And they're so generous with their time and their feedback, and we're extremely grateful for that.
Okay. It sounds like what you've created is a new way of viewing Grey County history, because for so long we've simply said, yeah, it starts when the settlers arrived. No, it didn't.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot there that we all need to be a part of, and of course, this being coming up on Truth and Reconciliation Day, something we can all be a part of. Now, which leads me to another question. Do you have school tours engaged in both Morstan and at Grey Roots?
Oh, absolutely. We have hundreds and hundreds of kids that come through Grey Roots every year. We have school programs that look at that Indigenous history, that look through how settlers would have survived in the time that they did. It's pretty inspirational. And we connect it to the different curriculum that the school's working with, and try to make it relevant for the kids. But so much of our school programming is just getting them hands-on doing stuff. And our education programs coordinator, Laura Arnold, is really amazing at coming up with new things that, she has this great program called Settler Savvy, and it looks at STEAM education. So looking at levers and pulleys and physics and how settlers would have had to use technology then versus what we do today. So she's really great at connecting today and the past, and making it really fun for the kids.
Is there a stump puller out at Grey Roots?
Oh, I'm sure there is. There's also a rock puller, like one of the
rock puller.
Yeah,
that would be a really good exercise to get some of the kids, find a big rock and pull that thing out.
Yeah.
You have to come down to Egremont to do that.
Either that or beautiful Stony Keppel.
Fair enough.
There you go.
No, let's face it. Grey County is rocks, trees, and water.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
There's lots of it.
Yeah.
Jill, I wanted to ask you. You're new to the job, and that you arrived when COVID started, I believe, or just before COVID started, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I started with Grey County in April of 2020. When I had started, the staff here had been redeployed to assist in essential services, mostly in long-term care. So it took a couple months for me to even meet staff. But it was a good time for me to, really get an understanding of how things were operating here. And it was really, heartwarming to see how staff really wanted to help and jumped at opportunities to help. So, yeah, it was a strange time, but I'm so.
Well, there we go again, but that's okay. Brian, what at the county level, what happens when, or what will happen with Grey Roots? It's got permanent funding, correct?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
and you know what, I wasn't on county council when Grey Roots was built or put there, but anybody that was will recognize or remember that there was some controversy around it at the time. It wasn't a unanimous decision to do it, but I dare say that in hindsight, council is very pleased to see that it is there, because it does serve a very powerful lesson and purpose for the county. And the archives are there as well. We haven't spoke about that very much, but the archives are there, and it's open to anybody to come and use. And there's a tremendous resource of materials there. If you're interested in history in southwestern Ontario, or Grey County in particular, it's a huge resource. And I just can't say enough about the whole organization out there. They do a great job.
Yes, I agree. I had the opportunity to need to use Bruce County Archives, and I found not only what I was looking for, I found more than I was looking for, because they just kept bringing stuff out to the table. Oh, we've got this, we've got that, we've got this, we've got that. I mean, whoa! But it made the work I was doing a whole lot easier. Well, Jill, let's get back to you for a moment. So you spent the first couple of months, dare I say, alone
Yes.
in that building, or very few staff.
Yeah, I was actually working from home, and then our facilities staff were here on site, just maintaining the space and doing all the building checks and that good stuff. But once we were able to reopen, we really saw the groundswell of support from the community. We're seeing numbers go up every year. We're starting to get back to that pre-pandemic levels, but there's lots of, you really, as an outsider, understand the connection people have to this museum. So many people bought memberships during our closures, even though they knew we were not going to be open, and they just wanted to support, and they wanted to send their support along. So that was something we saw really regularly. And donations coming in, like it's a really beloved space. Absolutely.
Sure. Now, Brian, I think the person you're thinking of is Dalton Becker. I believe he was one of the driving forces behind Grey Roots.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. I've heard stories.
Oh yeah, yeah. The stories are legendary, and I can't recount them word for word, of course, because I wasn't here. But yeah, Mr. Becker is a huge proponent of Grey Roots. Was and still is a very strong supporter of Grey Roots.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Jill, what kind of background do you have to do the kind of work you do? I mean, what's your background in this?
Well, I studied history, and then I realized that I didn't want to be a professor and mark papers and all of that. So I looked for ways to work with history outside of academia, and I did degrees in public history, which is really looking at all the other ways you can work in history. And then I started as a tour guide. I worked at Parks Canada sites in Newfoundland, which is where I'm from. I worked at Scarborough Historical Museum with the City of Toronto. And then I kind of worked my way up. I also worked for a while with a company called, a nonprofit, I guess, called Historica Canada. And they were the people who did the Heritage Minutes in the 90s, if you remember those. So they're still making those minutes. So I worked with them for a while, and then moved on to the City of Toronto's Museums and Heritage Services. And then was really lucky to come across the job posting here and get a chance to move up here. My whole family are constantly grateful for being able to move up here.
Well, we kind of refer to people like yourself as people who have found Grey.
Yes.
And we're very thankful.
We're thankful, absolutely.
Because it's one of the things that has happened, and I think you'll agree, Brian, is that this county is changing. It's not it's not what it was when I arrived here in 2000. And it's rich, it's deep, and it's rich, and there's all kinds of exciting stuff happening.
Yeah, as I often say, new people bring new ideas, new perspectives, and it's exciting to see so many new people coming to the area. Now, not everyone would hold that opinion, I'm sure, but I am truly excited to see the number of new people coming to the area.
Joe, what is the future plan for getting Grey Roots on the map? Obviously, there's the kind of rebuilding post-COVID, getting things back, get programs running again, get the school kids back in. But are there plans to, dare I say the word, sell Grey Roots into the tourist market and that kind of thing?
I think Grey Roots definitely could do more to get the awareness to rise about Grey Roots. I bet there are people in the southern part of the county that don't even know this is a county museum for them, but also getting the word out to visitors. Grey County has an amazing group of people who come through as tourists every year, people on their way up the peninsula and to come to Grey County itself. So there's definitely a huge market that we could do more to get our word out to. We're really looking at ways to really use the assets we have right now. We've got a few projects that need to get finished in the village. For example, we have an 1890s caboose that we're hoping to refurbish and let visitors explore the inside of. We're looking at ways of making the village more interactive, and that might sound complicated, but it could be as easy as offering antique vehicle rides through the village. We have a fleet of antique vehicles here that are lovingly taken care of by our volunteers, and there's some amazing vehicles, so it'd be great to make them more accessible to the public that visit. So we're looking for ways to really increase the animation in the site and make things more interactive, have that touch and feel experience with history, and then getting that word out. So there's always more to do. Absolutely.
Well, I keep asking Jill every time I'm out there, when do I get to learn how to drive the steam traction tractor? I really want to do that.
You just talk to Alan O'Neill, one of our facilities technicians. He is happy to give you a little lesson out there. They have a great time running that steam engine. The other day they made corn using the steam from the traction engine. So this is the best corn I've ever had, I think. So.
Well, Brian, I hate to tell you, but before you learn how to drive, you got to learn how to stoke the fire.
Yeah, but that's hard work. Very hard work.
Yes, it is, and I only know that because I know Ted, who used to be have care of the steam engine, but it's really good to hear that you're getting those vehicles used. I happen to know a couple of the original donors, and rode in some of those vehicles in the past, and they're marvelous. Totally different from my 2023 truck, but very, very interesting to ride in. And you better learn how to shift a manual transmission.
That's right. And when you smell the engine and you hear how it sounds, it's a really different experience than just looking at it, which is cool. But when you really have that experience, it's pretty visceral. And then to imagine a whole town with vehicles that sounded and smelled like that, it's changes your perspective.
Certainly does. Well, at this point, we're going to take a quick break and come back because, we got more to talk about. Lots more to talk about. I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking. We'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
This is Rogers TV.
Welcome to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people. The Stalo are people of the river. I'm so thankful for the courage and resiliency of our ancestors who lived on this land since time immemorial. Each of us have gifts from the Creator, and our Creator has a plan and purpose to be fulfilled in our territory. As we embrace our traditional teachings, we can lead the next generation into the fullness of what our Creator designed. Our shared history reveals a broken relationship. But as all Canadians commit to hear truth, acknowledge injustice, we can learn to walk in our traditional way, Letsamot, with a good heart and a good mind. Then all of our lives will be enriched. Kwasai.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guests are Warden Brian Milne of Grey County and Jill Paterson, who is manager of Museum and Archives, also known as Grey Roots. No, it's not in Owen Sound. It's actually in Chatsworth.
Actually, I think it's in Georgian Bluffs.
Oh, you're right. It is in Georgia. Sue Carlton will have my neck for garters.
I had to correct you, or otherwise I would have got crucified. So anyway,
That's right, because it depends on which side of the road you're on.
yeah, they're a little touchy about that up here.
They are. I know that. and it's the bypass.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, Brian. I know. Anyway, Jill, what kind of programs will be running this fall and through the winter?
Thanks for asking. So on the horizon, we have our Harvest Fest, which is really our celebration of fall harvest traditions, looking at Grey County's history, but also looking at newcomers and trying to create kind of a multicultural experience of, what we all do at harvest time. So that's coming up on September 23rd. And so look to our website, greyroots.com, to get some details on that. We're also doing a series of adult workshops that are really focused on crafting and traditional skills. There are canning workshops coming up in the next few weeks. There was one today about bruschetta, which was smelling amazing in the main building. We're also doing some felting craft workshops and pie making. So really trying to look at the adult learning community and seeing what they'd like to do. We also have a film screening coming up for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which is a free event. We're showing a film called Soup on Wheels, which is about an Indigenous cartoonist and activist who talks about his experience in residential schools, but also his experience as a person with cerebral palsy and how he was an advocate for people with disabilities as well, and a really amazing figure. And the film was made by a Huron County filmmaker. So she'll be on site to discuss the film with the audience as well. So that'll be great. And then we're looking forward to Halloween experiences for kids in the village. And then our beloved Morston by Candlelight will be back again at Christmas time. So we know that's a big favorite here, and we look forward to it too.
Oh, we got lost again. Anyway, Brian, what was I going to say? I've lost my train of thought here. There she is. I just have to fake it for 30 seconds, and you're back.
I'm back.
That's great. Yeah, you're back. So the Morston by Candlelight is kind of the year end thing. Then Morston shuts down or goes into hibernation for the winter. Is that right?
That's right. Occasionally on nice days, people can still walk around, but the buildings themselves are closed, and we don't ask volunteers to be in those cold buildings in the winter. So we do kind of go into hibernation mode in the winter.
Sure, but the main building is open.
Absolutely, yes.
And there's a bookstore there as well? Is there still not a restaurant, but a snack bar or?
There is a cafe space. It doesn't have a like a vendor at the moment. So if anybody has any ideas, feel free to be in touch. We'd love to see people be able to get a nice cup of coffee and a piece of pie or something when they come for their visit. We do have a store, and it's really interesting. We sell as much local history books as we do things like stuffies and toys. So people come in really looking for Grey County resources, and we have an amazing collection of really unique history books about Grey County.
I was going to mention, and I've been there not all that recently, but as I recall, it has an amazing collection of municipal histories, those township histories that are often limited print runs. And what's really interesting is if those go into the secondhand market, like you give it to your kids and they sell it at auction, they go for ridiculous prices.
That's right.
They're absurd.
Yeah.
So you can. Those municipal histories are really quite fascinating and quite interesting.
And a great story about those books is I had a visitor come one day who she just wanted to look up her family history in one of these books. She found the mention of the family, and I told her to just go into the archives and ask them if they have anything further. And once she went in there, they found photographs of her family right on the front step of the premises where they worked. They found many more detailed documents about the history of her family. So she walked away just like beaming with the amount of information that they found for her.
Another interesting resource, David, is the Tweedsmuir books. They're in the archives, and if you want to learn local history, boy, there's a lot of stuff in there. And we talked earlier about gossip in the grocery store or in the general store. There's a bit of gossip in those Tweedsmuirs, that's for sure.
There absolutely is. And some of the research that I was doing this summer, I actually found a lot of solid information in the Tweedsmuir histories and what was really interesting is that the Tweedsmuirs verified other histories that had been written with different sources. And some of the stuff that was in there was on one hand heartbreaking. I discovered an account of one of the ministers serving up in Tobermory, and what he had to go through. He was a single man, and he ended up acting as dentist, teacher. When a teacher quit in the middle of the winter, he carried a first aid. He was equipped with a first aid kit, and if someone hurt themselves, he was the doctor or the emergency unit. And there was a very poignant moment where he would wander the shores and came across a wedding ring, brand new. That probably was from a sailor who had lost his life. And just breaks your heart. But that was life in the Bruce and life in Grey County. It was hard. Mm-hmm. It was hard. So, and those Tweedsmuir histories are absolutely incredible. I recall coming across a reference in one where the Women's Institute was doing bandages for the Red Cross, and they would make a contribution to the machine gun fund. And I'm going, what? Machine gun fund? Anyway, interesting stuff. Well, Jill, for the winter, things, as I said, go into sort of hibernation. Are there any programs planned for 2024 that you can talk about?
Well, I think she was frozen for that question.
I was. I'm sorry. I just returned.
Now, though.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any programs in 2024 that you can talk about?
Yes. So we will be continuing with Game Changers. We were able to get that extended until the end of January, which I think will be great for the winter months. If you're a family member, you can come and play in Game Changers for free. It's basically an arcade in the middle of the museum with lots of educational opportunities as well, but a great place to run kids around if it's a bad weather day. Then looking into the summer, we have a new exhibit coming called Inspiring Nature, which is all about special evolutionary traits in animals and how they really have some superpowers. So that should be really interactive and really interesting to kids as well. And then we'll be continuing on with revamping the Grey County Gallery. So look forward to a launch there. And then really we'll be looking at perfecting our village experience and offering more interactive experiences. And we'll be doing our kids camp again. We'll be doing a lot of our old favorites, but then really trying to perfect a lot of the things we already do.
Sure. Well, it's actually, I think Grey Roots is a gem that we have here in Grey County. And it's one of those, I actually bumped into or got to meet a new family who have immigrated from South Africa. And I said, and they've settled here in Canada. And I said, look, you want to find out about what Grey County, what this community is? Go to Grey Roots. Oh, we didn't know. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that really, it's a strength for us that tells our story in many, many different ways. So, well, let's switch this up a bit. And because this wouldn't be politically speaking if you didn't get a chance to talk, Brian.
Oh, I probably said enough already.
Spoken like a true politician. or should I say an atypical politician?
Atypical. Well, I tell people I'm a farmer that just does a little bit of politics on the side.
Because it's politicians who do a little farming on the side, but you're honest about it. Okay, fair enough. I wanted to ask you because what's it like now living in the municipality and being the mayor of the municipality where you've got the highest body of water in Ontario?
Well, I tell you, big things are happening. It's the community is changing dramatically and fast in Southgate, as you described, particularly in Dundalk, and primarily because of our proximity to the GTA. During the pandemic, we saw a huge influx of people trying to escape the large urban centers, and we have a developer in Dundalk that is building in the order of about 200 homes a year now, whereas 6-7 years ago, if we had 35 or 50 new home starts a year in the whole township, that was a big year. But now we got one guy building over 200 homes a year. So there's lots going on. It's not all positive. I'll be honest with you that it is changing the character of the community. But as I said earlier, it's exciting. There's lots of opportunities. The downtown Dundalk is not unlike a lot of small downtowns in southwestern Ontario. Quite frankly, it's struggled, but I think there's going to be and is currently lots of opportunities to serve all these new residents, and I think that bodes well for the township and for the town of Dundalk in particular.
Have you got your new McDonald's open yet?
Not yet, but actually we're doing the ribbon cutting next week, I think, or not the ribbon cutting, the sod turning next week. So although it's underway, I'm told, I haven't actually been past it in a few days, but it's underway. And the other, I guess you had alluded to it, the new water tower is pretty cool. We probably got the newest water tower in Ontario, and we most certainly have the highest body of water in Ontario because Dundalk is the highest elevation populated area in Ontario. There is one ridge in northern Ontario that's higher, but it's not populated. So Dundalk is the highest elevation populated area in Ontario. If you factor in the height of the water tower, if you were standing on the top of our new water tower, you'd actually be looking down onto the observation deck of the CN Tower.
Well, that's quite remarkable because we don't think of that very often. Just how when we talk about the Dundalk Highlands, we think snowstorms. We think wicked weather. Yep. But now there's another reason. That's higher than the CN Tower. Wow.
Yep.
Hey, here's an idea for a new tour for you. It probably would only interest engineers and water people, but you could always do a tour of all the water towers in Grey County.
Well, we have a waterfall tour. Why not have a water tower tour? Sounds good to me.
Sure. I mean, you've got, as you drive up Highway 10, you've got Dundalk, you've got Markdale, you've got Chatsworth, there's Durham as well, and I'm sure there are others.
Oh, yeah.
So, hey, go for it. Where's the tourism people?
Talk to my colleagues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Do you think there are any antique water? No, there's no antique water towers because they've all fallen down. Or if they were on the railroad, they're all destroyed.
Yeah, they're all gone. Actually, I think probably one of the oldest water towers that I'm aware of would be in Arthur. Arthur has one of those old classic with the steel legs and the round bottom, I think. They have another newer one, of course, but that old one, I don't know when it would be built, probably back in the post-war period, and it's still being used as far as I know.
Sure. Well, there's an opportunity for someone.
But that's in Wellington County.
That's true. That's true. I guess the big news, Brian, if there is big news in Grey County, is Rockwood Terrace.
Yeah, lots going on there, that's for sure. We're pretty excited about that project. It's going to be an expanded capacity from what is currently there at the current Rockwood Terrace. But from what I've seen so far of the design and the engineering and so on, it's going to be a pretty nice facility, and so it should be. It's going to be the home of up to 128 folks, and we want it to be the best that it can be. It's going to be built directly south of the current facility on property that the county came into possession of a couple of years ago. And actually right now, just last week rather, we let the tender to preliminarily construct the roads that are going to be extended to go around Rockwood Terrace and to do the groundworks, level the ground, prepare it for construction. And the actual contract or the tender rather, for the general contractor will be let early winter, late fall, and construction hopefully will start early next year.
With a finishing date about 2 years down the road?
Yeah, it'll take a couple of years at the least to get it built. These things never go as fast as you think they should, but it'll take a couple of years to get this completed for sure. Yep.
Well, you're probably a lot further ahead than the Markdale Hospital.
In terms of
getting it done.
Getting it done? Well, yeah. I hope this project does not take 20 years, that's for sure. But coincidentally, as you may know, the ribbon cutting for the new Markdale Hospital is actually tomorrow at 10 o'clock. The Premier and the Minister of Health are attending, and they will be cutting the ribbon to open the new hospital in Markdale. But it's, as you say, it's been 20 years, a long time in coming. But I've toured it as well, and it's a remarkable facility as well compared to what's currently there.
For sure. I used to tease Bill Walker when he was our MPP that, when's it going to get built? He'd say, soon. And darn it, he retired before I could give him the courtesy of seeing that project finished and open. But I'm sure he'll be there as well.
Well, I would hope he's going to be there, but you never know. He's a busy man himself. As you probably know, he does a lot of marriages. He's the what do you call officiant? He's the officiant in a lot of local marriages. So I see his Facebook posts from time to time, and he's a busy man. So whether he'll be there or not, he should be there. But whether he's there or not, I don't know.
For sure. It's going to be interesting to see that because it's a new generation of hospitals. I don't know whether you've been to any of the latest generation of hospitals, but it's like night and day when you compare them with what we have here.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Well, let's come back. Let's go back to another what I did with my summer thing, AMO. And what you went to AMO, I trust.
I went to AMO. It was in London, Ontario, right at the convention center there down on Dundas Street. A lot of people there. In fact, I believe they stated that it was the largest attended AMO conference in history. And it's not uncommon to have a bump in numbers after a municipal election, because this would have been the first AMO conference after the last election. So there's lots of new people, lots of people wanting to see what AMO is all about. And it was well attended by the government as well. Most, if not all, of the ministers were there at one time or another. There was a lot of delegations. Grey County had 4 delegations. Don't ask me to rhyme them off. It'll take me too long to remember because I got a good memory, but it's just not very long. But we were well received by the ministers that we did have delegations with. And, of course, there's a lot of networking goes on. in the hallways in between and during the different events taking place at AMO. So this government, current government, is in a hurry. I think would be an understatement to get their things done. And I think the general thought of most delegates would have been or is that, yeah, you could spend a little more time consulting with other levels of government before you swing the hammer. But, I don't think anybody, after the last provincial election, I don't think anybody should be surprised that we've got what we got. And, we're happy, Grey County is happy to work with any government. And we're doing what we can to make sure that our interests are taken into account, at least, before any decisions are made. But, of course, the government does what the government does.
When I say the word greenbelt, most that we think of down the GTA or whatever, but the greenbelt is actually much larger, isn't it?
It is so. It encompasses most, if not all, of the Niagara Escarpment protected lands. And yeah, it takes in a huge swath of land in Ontario. So it's a little bit, and I'm trying to choose my words here carefully, but it's a little bit distressing to see how callously, perhaps, maybe that's not the right word, but I'll use it anyway, how callously the land was yanked out of that protected status to build more houses on, when the provincial government's own housing task force said that a shortage of land is not the problem. We have lots of land. It's what kind of housing do you want to build? And if it's just about housing, we need to go up instead of sprawl out. And if we're going up, we've got lots of land to build housing on. And we don't need more green space to build houses on, because sprawl primarily, of course, is on septic and wells. And if you put a large concentration of houses with services of wells and septic, that's not only always the best environmental solution for that kind of stuff. So the cost of infrastructure now, the sewage and water, is such that you need that density to keep the cost down. So, and I'll bring it back to what's going on in Dundalk currently. The density in those houses is considerably higher than what historically we've had. And, I guess I talked to some longtime residents that maybe are used to seeing a house on a half an acre or even an acre of land, and they think, well, that's what's normal. Well, in large parts of the world, that's not normal, because that's a huge waste of land. So if you have up to, 20, 25 units per hectare, that's a far better use of that space and that land and those resources than plunking down a house on every acre of land. And, we have some of the best farmland in Ontario, and we want to keep it that way. That land needs to be productive, because if you pave it over, that is the last crop that you'll ever take off that land. Anyway, that's my rant. I won't go any further than that.
Brian, you're the warden. You're allowed to rant, at least on this show.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. But I think you make a very valid point about density. We're used to single family dwellings on larger lots, but that's not the reality. No. The other thing is that when you have a higher density, those people need greenbelt for their recreation space.
Well, that's right. I mean, we like space around us. And, as someone who farms, I'm quite used to having lots of space around me. But as I started to say there earlier, and I kind of went off on a tangent in that rant, but, a lot of people from this area might think, well, I want half an acre or an acre per property, but and they say they'd never want to live in a place where there's a lot of density. But I say, but we're looking at it from our perspective. If you look at it from the perspective of a single parent in a 20th story condo, less than 1,000 square feet, now they're coming to a place in Dundalk where, yes, the density is higher than it traditionally has been, but that family thinks they've landed in heaven because now they have a front yard. It doesn't matter how small it is, it's their front yard. So they think it's great. And it is compared to where they're coming from. So it's all about perspective and where you're coming from and what you think is normal. And again, people think it's normal to aspire to own your own home. And it is normal for this area. But again, in large parts of the world, for instance, London, England, most people in London, England never own their own home and don't expect to own their own home. They rent for their entire lives. And that's just normal there. So maybe it's a paradigm shift we need to think about, what's normal and what isn't normal. Normal needs to change, and it does change. It's just a question whether people are coming along with the change.
One of the questions I always ask of the Blue Water and Catholic boards of education is the growth factors that we are dealing with. And over the years, having hosted this show, it's changed dramatically from, well, we're cutting back, but oh my golly, in the last 2 years, those schools down in Dundalk or Kincardine.
The two schools in Dundalk, yeah, you're right, David. The two schools in Dundalk are well over 50% capacity. They're getting slammed big time. And we have hounded, and I say that, hounded the education minister and anybody else that'll listen, that we need a new school in Dundalk. And, it's unfortunate the funding formula allows the board to build for what the numbers are right now. But we know the developer is building 200 houses a year and will continue to do for the foreseeable future. So we need an expanded component to the new school. And, both of those schools have, I think, 4 portables each. And there's more portables coming because even if the minister announces a new school today, it'll be 3 years before a new school is built. And they're almost getting to the point where the washroom facilities in those schools is too small. And they're thinking about putting porta potties at the school. Well, that's just wrong in Canada. In a rich country like this, we're going to ask young children to go out in the dead of January to use a porta potty. Well, that's crazy. We hound the minister every chance we can. Do we get a new school?
I don't think the minister would appreciate having to go outside to use a porta potty at Queen's Park.
I dare say not.
I dare say not either. So, well, if you wanted to do a little guerrilla politics, Brian, you could take a porta potty down to Queen's Park and leave it on the front lawn.
Well, I could, but I dare say again that probably security would take a dim view of that.
I would say so. I want to thank the both of you for being a part of Politically Speaking today. Jill, it's a pleasure to meet you, and always good to hear the stories of Grey Roots. It's a great place, and I hope people will get out and see it now that we can. And Brian, it's always good to hear your perspective on our county and to see it from the perspective of the warden. So to the both of you, thank you. And
thank you, David.
And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. Yes, we'll talk again.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Hi, I'm David Shearman, host of Politically Speaking. Join me for my next show, where my guest will be the Warden of Grey County. Politically Speaking on Rogers TV.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live game, every Sunday afternoon, all season long. Follow your favorite teams and players live in HD. Order NFL Sunday Ticket and